because like you could argue that Euphoria is like a young adult TV show.
Right.
That's like
it has no young
so
adult.
dark.
Could you really argue that though? Like, it's the most X-rated show I've ever seen.
I think young adult is a genre. It's
young adult's a genre for sure. So I don't want to make too strong of points here and rewrite history, but yeah.
To all of our 7 listeners.
Yes.
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, Second Pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And this is Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. And today we have a friend and guest, Nicole Schillerstrom. Nicole, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we are so grateful that you could be here because, because it's always great to have another opinion besides the 3 of us just in an echo chamber here. But it's also great because you are and correct me if I'm wrong, a self-proclaimed non-fantasy reader.
That is correct.
Okay, good. Yeah. So for today, we really wanted to talk with somebody who doesn't gravitate towards fantasy normally when they're reading, because we think this is a good intro book to fantasy if maybe that's not your jam. So hoping that we were correct in that, but we'll find out as we go along. And before we get your take, we'll leave our listeners in suspense for a minute. Just wanted to ask you our opener for the podcast to get to know you a little better, and that is what you are reading this summer. So what are you bringing on summer vacation?
Yeah, definitely. I read a lot of memoirs and biographies. And right now I am reading a memoir of Julia Child. So the American chef that taught Americans how to master French cooking. And it's interesting because it's from her time when she moved to France for her husband's job when he was working for the U.S. Information Service. And at that time, she had no experience with cooking at all whatsoever. And it talks about their travels throughout France, how she became inspired by French cuisine, and how that ultimately led her to go to cooking school and try to share what she learned with her American friends back home. So it's a fun read because it has, French travel in it, good food, and she's a pretty interesting person. So
yeah, I have a poster of Julia Child in my room. I love to cook,
so
I actually that you've inspired me a bit to read this.
Phoebe has been trying to get us to be like, guys, we should read a cooking book.
Yeah,
like, me and Phil are like,
no.
What do you want us to read? Recipes on the podcast?
And Phoebe's like, yes, like that's what I want. So maybe we could like do this. This sounds a little bit more attainable than just like reading recipes.
True. Good point. No, that's a great read for the summer. Nicole, thank you for sharing that with us. Isaac, what are you reading this summer on vacation?
I haven't started it yet, but it's on my to-read list.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about this book on a podcast. They interviewed the author. It's called The Constitution for the Modern Reader by Melissa Murray. I cannot remember her credentials, but it seemed like a very good, like kind of understanding of the Constitution, kind of one of those books that like goes through and, breaks down different stuff. It has stories along the way of where these articles or laws or whatever got implemented. So I want to read that eventually by the end of the summer.
Nice. It sounds a bit dry, but it could be good.
Well, I think she makes it a little fun. The author sounded like very spunky. So I hope that, makes her way into her writing.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, I've been traveling quite a bit for this jerky escapade. So
shout out to Snapper Creek Jerky.
That's right. We have been. It's been like hard to get something going here because I want to read like pretty fake stuff while I'm like sort of working because just take my mind off of it. But I just on the way to Cincinnati yesterday started and finished The Wedding People by Alison Espach. It's about this recently divorced woman coming out of pandemic that basically goes to a hotel in order to kill herself. So it's very like if you have
Ooh.
suicide ideation triggers, sort of
This is
tough.
your summer vacation read.
Yeah, but it becomes like it's a very humorous read actually because she then meets the bride who's like, "You're not killing yourself on my wedding weekend. Like this is not happening because I can't deal with this." It's good and a lot of like deep subjects like suicide talked about in like a lighthearted sort of joking, but like in actually a woman sort of getting through it manner. So I liked it.
Okay. I can see how you could turn that into a summer vacation read, Phil.
Yeah.
Nice. I want to read, and I haven't started it yet, The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. This has been recommended to me a lot. And I haven't really actually read any straight up fiction this year too much, if at all. So, yeah, that's what I would like to read this summer. And I've heard very good things about it. So all interesting reads, lots of different vibes going on there, which is great. So something for everybody. And then Isaac, before we start discussing Raven Boys, would you be able to summarize it for us quickly?
Yeah, so the main character, Blue, is a like 15 or 16-year-old girl. She lives in a house of psychics with her mom and aunts and other psychics, but she doesn't have this power herself. She's just a amplification of supernatural power. And she's destined to kill whoever she kisses that is her true love. So because of this, she has sworn off, falling in love, sworn off boys. However, she becomes, like any teenager does, ingrained with this group of boys from the local prep school called the Raven Boys, and that's what she calls them. And together they continue on this quest to find Glendower, which is a Welsh king who died and they believe got transferred to the hills of Virginia. And whoever wakes him up is granted a wish by Glendower. So they're seeking him out.
Yes, very fantasy summary there because there's a lot going on with that. And just as a reminder too for our listeners, there will be spoilers that we're talking about. And this is part of our Chapter 4 Fantasy Academy trope series. So the academy element of this is the boys going to the local prep school academy. And I think to start off, I'd really like to know, Nicole, what do you think? What did you think about the book?
I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was easy to read. I think I have these preconceived notions of fantasy that it's all, fairies and princesses and medieval. And I guess maybe with the Glendower piece, there was a little bit of that, but it was more tangential than in the forefront. This fantasy academy trope is something I had never considered, and I really enjoyed. And I think something else that I noticed is I didn't realize right off the bat that it was a young adult series. And I think there's so much imagination in young adult writing. And it helped me to rediscover that because I haven't really read any young adult fiction in a long time. So overall, I was very pleasantly surprised.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that.
So I think I was or Phil maybe suggested this and I read it. I was like, yeah, I think this would be a good one too. And I read it like back in the spring as we were like kind of vetting for it. And I didn't really realize it was young adult until I reread it in preparation for like the actual filming. So that's interesting that you like noticed like kind of right away. I don't know if Phil and Phoebe, if you guys did too, but it like was kind of over my head a little bit that it was YA. Until we maybe like talked and then I read it again. I'm like, oh yeah, how did I not realize?
I think fantasy though can hide it like pretty easily.
I was going to say that as well. I think fantasy, especially when you have younger characters, it's a very thin line between a 16-year-old who's a young adult 16-year-old and like a Percy Jackson versus like in Night Angel by Brent Weeks, it's about like an assassin. He starts at 12. That is not a young adult. Like, I mean, there's like a lot going on there. And yeah, it's hard with younger kids with also like sort of serious themes too. Like the kid gets murdered. Like, I mean,
Right.
it's not like a happy-go-lucky book. So, but you're right. It's harder. I think for me too. I also will say, as someone who's read the whole series, I think it becomes less young adult, or she becomes more willing to foray into more serious topics. It's also interesting because, like, is young adult a topic, or is it a style, or is it like something that you're not willing to go into? Because, like, you could argue that Euphoria is like a young adult TV show
Right.
that's
When
like
it has no young
so
adult.
dark.
Could you
Yeah.
really argue that though? Like, it's
I
the most
mean,
X-rated show I've
I
ever
think young
seen.
adult is a genre. It's like
Yeah, young adult's a genre for sure. So I don't want to, I don't want to make too strong of points here and
Yeah.
rewrite history, but
To all of our 7 listeners.
yes.
Well, I think the thing that I noticed the second time around more, and then I was like, oh, this is very clearly young adult for me, is how accepting the characters were of all this supernatural stuff. The way it was written and kind of flowed, there was no questioning of like, yeah, I am a daughter of a psychic and I like go to the graveyard every year and help amplify the power to see the dead pass through this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh yes, our friend who we've been hanging out with for 18 monthts, turns out he's been a ghost the whole time. Yeah, that's like kind of weird, but we're just going to keep trying to hang out with him. And there was no like, what the hell is going on here?
So I read that as magical realism. I read that in a completely different way. So like Isabel Allende or Gabriel Garcia Marquez is not at all yet YA.
Explain
There's
magical
this
realism, Phil, because I think like for people who don't read a lot of fantasy, and that's who we're trying to attract with this particular book in the series, what that is.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of this borderline, and Nicole probably knows more because she seems like a more serious reader than me. But I will say that like it's more you're living in like real world. Everything is real, like Henrietta, Virginia, real. And then there's these magical elements, which basically just defy reality. But like everyone's a bit on board. There's sort of a connection to Arthurian fantasy here, because
I said the exact same thing. I had my note like,
yeah, there's a connection. So, because Arthurian fantasy you read, and this is probably what Nicole, and I personally do not like Arthurian fantasy. And Nicole, you probably think of this where it's like, okay,
100%.
Let's go in this quest with swords, and I love swords, and I love old hearty meals and taverns for sure. Like, sign me up. But the Arthurian fantasy basically is just like we have this main quest and we live in England, and then like a fairy comes and I go live in this fairy world for 30 years. Not crazy at all. But I think insofar as fantasy goes to just non-fantasy readers, that is like those are two genres of fantasy that honestly currently are not very popular, and I don't like them specifically too much. So if you're turned away from those, like there's other ways to get into the genre that have nothing to deal with this like magical realism, I guess.
Yeah, which is evident in this book.
Mm-hmm.
I think the YA conversation for me was one of my favorite things about this book, and it's kind of part of how it was written in a young adult, in my opinion, as a young adult book, was the point of view. I thought that the way that the story was told was that the narrator, so it was third person point of view, limited, but I felt like it was an adult telling a book about kids. And I think that made me, so Isaac, I think your biggest strife with this book was the likability and believability of the characters. But I felt like because of the way, the point of view that it was told through, that it allowed me to like the characters and allowed me to believe the story more, because it was like this grand adventure where you were saying, where crazy things are happening and no one's really questioning it, but it's told as if like, oh, these silly kids kind of thing almost. And even Blue as a character, I think, could be really not likable because she felt this need to be so different. She cut up all her clothes. She always was doing something wacky. But the way that she was portrayed by the narrator, I think, made her more likable to me. And so that, I think, really overall, more than anything about this book, stood out to me. And it for me, allowed me to really enjoy the book. And I don't know, Isaac, if you just missed that, or it did not have the same effect for you.
Yeah, I think I didn't mind how it was third person limited. I think that was the right way to tell this story. Are we sure it's third person limited? Is that correct?
I looked it up ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just saying because you said it, I have no idea.
Third person omniscient is when like they know they're telling the story from above, but they know all the characters.
Yeah,
this one is like
everything.
you only know about what Blue is thinking at the time that Blue is being narrated. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I fully agree, I think, with you, Phoebe, in the fact that there's this third person narrator, and the fact that it's young adult is, it seems like they all are trying to figure out who they are. Whereas if they were adults, they might have a more grounded understanding of who they are. And several of the characters are trying to be something that they're not. And I think that really came out with Blue, where she's trying to be unpredictable. She's trying to be different. And then we see towards the end of the book, she realizes that she's truly just very sensible and reliable in nature. And, Adam, who is trying to reconcile his pride and his background with who he wants to be. I think those themes are very indicative of teens rather than adults.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so that is a great point, and maybe the reason why I didn't like any of the characters, because they are like pushing
teenagers
against So maybe I just don't like teenagers written as real teenagers. In fantasy especially, I love being able to connect to a character and seeing myself as one of them, like thinking of myself as this hero, thinking of myself on this grand adventure. And I didn't want to be any of these characters. And maybe because I have already been that. And, I have figured myself out. But I didn't put that together. So that was a great point, Nicole.
Yeah, that was a really good point. Well, and well articulated too. Like, I feel like I was trying to say that, but you really said the thing that I was thinking. So what about the plot? Like, what did you guys think of I feel like there was two big plot kind of things going on. And when I tried to summarize this for our episode, I summarized the wrong plot basically, because Isaac was like, well, what about this whole other thing that's happening with Glendower? Like, that's really the key. But then you have Blue worrying about this prophecy because she thinks she's going to kill somebody. And did you think, like, I felt like it was not a bit distracting, but there was two different things going on that I think probably would actually speak to a young adult as well, like the whole love interest, but then also having the main adventure plot. What did you guys think about the plot overall?
I do agree that in some points it was a little bit disjointed, but it does probably speak to the fact that they are individuals with different desires and in different trajectories of their lives. I found it interesting that, the Blue plot was very significant to her, but for the vast majority of the book, the characters were completely unaware of the circumstances surrounding that until she told Gansey, and then I believe maybe alluded to it to Adam, but didn't necessarily tell him.
You think that, and then in the second book, Adam is still completely unaware. Okay. So like Adam did not get it.
Adam's a bit clueless.
Yeah. Well, and speaking to that, Phil, I think there was a lot of the plot that was alluding to what could materialize in future books that we don't get answers to.
Right.
And that I had a lot of questions with, but I guess it does propel you to keep reading more within the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely leaves you with a lot. Like, I just wrote, I had a little note of the same thing, Nicole, of just like a lot of unanswered questions. We have the whole Neve thing, like her power and possession. Really, truly, if you were like, I could remove a character and nothing changes, Neve kind of like doesn't matter right now. But there was a couple like parts of the book where she is featured pretty heavily.
Right.
Just in general, how close they all are. After, like, they've only been friends for 18 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now Gansey is like Ronan's guardian almost. And like they have befriended this dead boy. Like
but don't you think that's also teenagers?
Kind of a kid thing.
Yeah.
But like Gansey's trust of Adam's like judgment of people, like there was this big long diatribe about like Declan's girlfriend and how like Adam was suspicious of her.
Yeah.
I feel like she maybe has a part to play. What is going on with Ronan's parents? We still know nothing about that.
Yeah.
And then you're led to believe that Gansey is going to be the boy that Blue kisses because of her cemetery vision and the vision in the woods, but then she likes Adam. So yeah, a lot of questions that was just like kind of what I noticed right away of just really unanswered. And then you read these questions like, God, what actually happened in this book? To like,
not a lot.
To have
I don't.
all these unanswered questions, and I think she's really, really setting the table for
The second
future books.
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. I mean, essentially, the only thing that happened is the professor tried to kill Gamzee, and then he got arrested.
Yeah,
right?
And they find out Noah's dead.
Yeah,
like that is like
that's
really
the
only
big.
thing that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a sense, it's odd because I think there's two ways to set up sort of like a next one in the series, in at least in like fantasy or this like supernatural realm. You can either open all these unanswered questions and then have a plot go on, and this is sort of like a procedural, right? Like you have this one small thing that's been solved, but all these underlying questions, like a pilot of a TV show, versus the other two that we read are actually pretty like tied off, except for the fact that there's like a king, like except for this very large overarching effect thing that we can still see going on.
Yeah.
Then whereas this one, it's really like if she ended it here, it'd be like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? And that's like a pilot of a TV show where you just like that didn't get something, and you're just like, okay, all of these subplots were set, never laid out. Versus like an end of a series of a TV show where you're like, it would suck if they canceled it because this one question hasn't been answered, this big question, but like.
Without
everything sort of got tied up except for this main question. And I think that that's like you can see that pretty easily here. And I think the YA, it's basically there needs to be questions in the back of your head at every single point. And I think even she was like, at the end, she had to throw in the fact that Ronan dreamed up the crow. Like she had to throw that even as a teaser. Right. Whereas like, really, she did not need to throw that. There were plenty of questions before Ronan could materialize.
Yeah, that's all other thing. What is going on with his bird?
I made a note about that.
So I do have a question then to put us all on the spot a little bit, and I think it'll be telling for you, especially Nicole. So would you read the second book then, since she is lining up all these? I would say I would, and disclaimer, I read Blood Song, which is our third book in this series, after this. And so then I kept reading that trilogy because it has other books as well. So I think I was definitely more intrigued by Blood Song to keep reading that series. But I also wanted to just read them in succession. But I would keep reading this one as well, especially to, like you guys are saying, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and she made it, I think, interesting enough for me in the first one. I think I want to know what happened with Ronan's family. That's my number one thing that I'm curious about right now. So what do you guys think? Would you read another book in this series?
I completely agree. I think now that Ronan's family was one of the things that kept me hooked, especially the psychic telling him a secret killed your father and you know what it is.
Yeah.
I have to find out what the secret is now.
Yeah. So it was enough for you, and it wasn't too fantasy as well, maybe.
Right.
To put words in your mouth a little bit there. Yeah. Phil, what about, you read the series, so it was definitely.
I will say my bar is like very low of what I read the next book because I have I'm in the constant quest to find books to read. Currently, just props for the TikTok, but I'm doing the 160 fantasy series that I've read in the last 4 years, rating them.
Wow.
So I'm on 154 right now. So there's a lot of lead up to the top ones.
Wow.
But
has the Raven Chat or whatever this series is called been mentioned yet? Or
no, please. Okay. I'm in like the dregs. 160 is so bad. I didn't even start finishing the series till like 80 or something. So, but this one I did finish. This one am even rereading now, and I will say, like, it does not disappoint with the next ones. I'm not gonna say like, oh, if you didn't like this one, just keep reading, you'll like the next one. But if you did like this one, she definitely does not drop the ball at all. Like I do think they get better. They're very similar, but she answers some questions she sets up. So
okay, that's a good plug, Phil. Isaac, you'll be the telling one here, I think.
I will not be reading the rest of this series.
This one bounced off of you.
I think I caught this one and decided to drop it. I actually no. That's a little harsh. That is too harsh. I didn't mind this, but the only way I would continue reading is if I was like on Libby and all the books I wanted to read were checked out. But then number 2 was available. I would check this one out and start reading it. Because you can like rip through it, you know, like you could be done in, you know, pretty quickly and then be like, okay, will I read number 3 or not? Right. And maybe by that time I'll be hooked.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I think is you didn't like that. Nicole, did you read this physically or did you listen to it?
I was just going to bring that up. So I read it physically, but then I did listen to a little bit of the audiobook yesterday when I was going for my Saturday walk. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if I continue this series, I'm just going to listen to it because...
Yeah. That was our impression. Isaac had the exact opposite.
Oh, okay.
I also think, Nicole, perhaps the reason that you were just like, bang, YA, is because he reads it in such a way that is easily like not YA-ish. Like it's just very teenagers being smart versus like if you actually read the dialogue, it's pretty childish. But the way that he presents it is like not. And
he really just delivers the story, I think.
His Blue is so good. Whereas I'm listening to the book and I'm thinking, would Blue piss me off right now if I was reading her? Like, would 100%. She make me so mad? But listening to her, I'm like, she's sort of edgy. Like, I did it.
Okay, based on this, I hope they compensated the narrator well.
Yeah.
It sounds like he added a lot.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I have a question for you all.
Okay.
So with Noah and the fact that he was dead, and I know Gansey was saying he'd never mentioned him to his father, which I thought was bizarre considering you have this boy living in your warehouse with you.
Yeah.
Was it your impression that no one else could see him?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think so. It was for me. It was my impression that because at the end his parents couldn't.
And I think they do say at the end that they never saw him go to class. Like they never saw him in class. So I think that would have been. To me, that indicated that I never like put that together, but yes, that indicated to me that only the boys in Blue and the psychics, like Blue's mom and her friends, could all see him. Obviously.
Which would seem indicative that they all have some sort of supernatural abilities. And I think maybe, again, that was alluded to at the end with Ronan saying he manifested Chainsaw the bird from a dream. But
I like this theory. I never even thought about that. Yes. True.
Yeah, I think that in the second book too, one thing like we had talked about sort of this academy trope that you have mentors and you have sort of like these trials and you have like a group of friends. This in this book definitely has less of the academy trope than the other two that we picked. It's sort of like a segue, but I will say one thing that this one was missing that the other two had is like this peer enemy. The second book strongly has that. So the second book is like very strongly the peer enemy, like the Draco Malfoy figure of the boys. So that sort of goes into the trope a little bit more. So I will say that as well. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I think this book was so I'll give my rating and my recommendation if you like this book. I think it was a 4 for me. And that's just based on, I think if I was recommending this to a young adult, this would be a 5. If I was recommending it to a peer, it would be a 4. And I think for all the reasons we discussed, I think if you liked this book, or actually because the Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo is more popular than this book, I would say if you liked Ninth House, you should read this book. Ninth House is not YA at all, but I think they're very similar, especially in the supernatural idea. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. What about you, Nicole?
I think I would give it a 5. And I think to your point, when I was thinking about how I would rate it or how I would recommend it, I'm thinking about the target audience. But it pleasantly surprised me, and that it's not something I would normally read. And I think that's great in that, for different circumstances, whether it be a book club or a setting like this, you can be, pushed to read outside of your normal genres. And I think that's healthy, and maybe it'll help me to pursue something with a little more substance to it in the fantasy genre in the future.
I love it. Do you have any?
That was our goal.
That was the goal. Yes, exactly. Do you have anything like it that you would recommend?
I truly do not.
Okay.
I truly do not.
This was the first of its kind for
yes,
you.
It was.
I love it. Awesome. Isaac, what about you? What was your rating of this book and also your recommendation?
Yeah, so I'm giving it a soft 4. I think that with Nicole saying, I'm not a fantasy reader, I read this, I would recommend this, tell people it's a 5, like that achieved like kind of what we were searching for, which is really vindicating for us, I think. Yeah. And also goes to show that like this book is good enough to like stand as the like intro to fantasy that we're looking for. So while not necessarily my favorite, I think a soft 4 is well warranted. And then I would recommend The Bright Sword, which we read for club meeting 24, and it is a
Arthurian.
How do you say it, Phil? Arthurian. Yeah, Arthurian novel, which like, okay, you read this one. I'm looking to get a little bit more into the fantasy world. I would say check out The Bright Sword. It'll delve you a little bit deeper. Yeah, a lot, kind of a similar vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, it was a 4 as well. I think the whole series, I rarely find series that can deliver on all 3 books, especially like popular. So Maggie Stiefvater is very popular. And often when you see that, you see some type of like publishing pressure. So there's a lot of balls dropped on the 3rd book in like when there's publishing pressure, and she does not. I think she delivers on all of her books. She also writes like some weird one-off ones that are pretty good. So I'd check her out. But my recommendation, I think, for somebody who is not like loving fantasy would be Naomi Novik's Spinning Silver. Naomi Novik writes a lot of fantasy, like Temeraire, which is dragons, and dragons fuck. So those are great, but like not for fantasy.
Not for everyone who
those
does
are
like
like
fantasy.
very fantasy. Spinning Silver, though, is not it is a little bit YA, but it's also more written as like a folk tale. And so I think that is a little bit more digestible to people who aren't like willing to jump off, because it's a one-off. It's written as a folktale. It's very cozy in like the Scandinavian winter. So I think, but it's very magical. Like it's a very definitely fantasy. So would try that one as a different jumping off point into the genre.
Nice. Thanks, Phil. Yeah. And then just before we go, we always give our listeners what we're going to be reading next time. And so that is Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan. Isaac, would you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, so Valinor Sorna is given to the Sixth Order, which is like the warrior group for the faith in his kingdom. And he quickly emerges as his class leader. And during his first test, he kind of uncovers a plot to kill him. He survives and finishes out his training after also multiple attempts on his life. Because that emerges as one of the most like famous warriors of the realm already. Then his fame just continues to grow. He leads an army against the Alperian Empire and ends up killing their heir to the empire, actually, unbeknownst to him. And then his king decides to end that war, however, and Valen is the collateral, and because he's traded to the Alperian Empire because of his perceived crimes, and has to fight a one-on-one battle for his life.
Yeah, awesome. Good summary. And that's another hard one to follow just because it's the fantasy summary is quite challenging. But very much looking forward to discussing with you guys next time we talk. And Nicole, before we go, I just want to thank you so much. This was really fun, I think, to have someone who was new to fantasy but loved to read. And so thank you so much for being on the podcast and talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Yeah. And we always sign off by saying to call someone that you love, tell them that you love them, tell them about a good book that you read. Hopefully it's Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. And until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
Beyond the first page.
Bye, guys.
See you guys. Thanks so much, Nicole.